Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family-friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Sound of Music to teach our kids history.
Musicals. Before we get into our episode, let's take a minute to address some small corrections from last time.
It's important to keep in mind that I don't warn Christopher about our topic beforehand. It's fun for me to see what he knows right off the top of his head. If you would like to hear a more comprehensive and well-prepared episode on any topic, just let us know. So, honey, what have we learned since last time?
Well, I haven't learned this since last time, but since apparently on a Tickety Talk or whatever that thing is called.
Yes, TikTok.
Okay, some people were saying this, that, or the other thing. I don't remember what it was all about. But there was some criticism of Alexander, which he gotten over time, about how, no, he wasn't an awesome guy that we should revere. He was a horrible guy that we should hate and write and know terrible things about him.
I believe he was called a murderer on TikTok.
Okay, fine, murderer. Yes. So I wanted to point out that. So it all depends on your culture. So while in Western culture, which is usually people from Europe, we get most of our culture, the foundations of our culture, from Greece and from Rome. That's why we call it Greco-Roman. And so that includes Alexander. So in our culture, Alexander is thought of as a hero usually because, he was on our side.
Right.
As is true today, if somebody is on our side, we don't mind as much that they're doing bad things if they're doing it for our side. Mm-hmm. But of course, if the other person does the same thing for the same reasons, well, then we tend to be a little bit more miffed, a little bit more bothered about it. So, yeah, Alexander's on our side, and that's why in Western culture we tend to call him Alexander the Great. However, when you look at other cultures besides our Western culture, like I believe in Iran today and other remnants of the former Persian Empire, Alexander is still taught there. Alexander is still known there as well. But in their cultures, he's depicted as a demon.
Makes sense.
Or something like a demon. They hate him. They have all sorts of bad, evil things to him. I believe I've heard a story once upon a time of at some point mothers would tell their children to be good, or Alexander's going to come and get you, something to that nature.
He was the boogeyman?
If I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I encountered this particular thing. This was back, I think. This is back when I was in junior high. I remember coming across all this stuff.
Well, that would be fun to look up then.
So it's important to remember that, even though in Western culture we reveal him as a hero, there are other cultures that recognize him as something other than a hero and a great man, who recognize him as the guy who destroyed their culture. Think about it. I mean, Persia was, for all intents and purposes, Persia was a major player at the time of Alexander. But then after Alexander defeats it, Persia pretty much disappears off the map. Like, we still know it, we still use the word, but as far as its power and influence, Persia never recovers from him.
Dang. Okay. On that happy note, something that I learned as I was doing the social media posts for our Great Depression episode, that picture that you mentioned of the mother selling her children, that has a fascinating backstory. So check out our Instagram, because I put it there. And I mentioned in that Instagram post the where you can go to read about the background. So it was a picture from 1948. So it wasn't during the Depression or the height of the Depression.
Which surprised me because, I've used it for I don't know how long as a Depression era pic. When I first came across it, something convinced me that it was a Depression era photo.
So it's much later, but it's from a newspaper. Supposedly, this family was in such great poverty, so that makes sense why you would associate with the Depression. So they were in such great poverty, and that's why she was selling the children. And she's also pregnant in that photo.
Oh.
But the backstory is more complicated than that. Her own family members accused her of staging the photo for the newspaper, that she didn't actually have a sign out there until, newspaper man, hey, I want to buy your, I want to take a picture of your kids. But the fact is, the kids were sold, adopted out, sent away, whatever, within 2 years of that photo. And the kids grew up horribly.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, some of them were definitely used as slaves. And the kids, they're full, older adults now, and they have some very complicated feelings about their mother. Maybe not so complicated, because some of them said, yeah, she didn't sell us because she was too poor to take care of us. They say that she hated us. She always hated us.
Oh.
So it's interesting. You should definitely read about it, because it was very sad and not as simple as family poor, depression hard, sell the kids. So very interesting read I had this week.
That is very sad.
Okay. Are you ready to get into our question?
I want to point out, though, okay, so despite the fact that my picture has been taken, or what's the word I'm looking for, was put in the wrong context, it is still something that people did during the Great Depression. They would sell off their kids.
I mean, not in, and maybe sell them, but definitely, like, I read about people sending their kids away to wealthier relatives. Mm-hmm. That for sure happened.
That for sure happened, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into it. Honey, I have a question for you.
What kind of question?
It's a history question.
I love history questions.
I knew you would.
Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me.
You're ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay, here's my question. Are catapults called catapults because they were originally designed for flinging cats?
What?
You can't tell me you haven't wondered. You're not a fan of cats.
I should have seen this coming as soon as you said the word catapult. No, catapults were not originally built. Okay. I cannot swear on a stack of holy books that catapults were not originally invented to fling cats, because, yes, cats are horrible, awful, the worst creatures that deity has ever created, though they are tasty.
That's a story we're going to have to share later.
I've traveled much of the world. They eat different things in different parts
of the world.
Much of the world.
You went to Hawaii.
I've traveled parts of the world.
To be fair, you lived in Hawaii, so you weren't just a tourist, but yes.
And what were you were asking me about catapults?
Cats.
All right. So no, catapults were not originally designed to fling cats. They were designed to break down fortresses, to break down barriers.
Were they ever used to fling cats over walls?
I can't swear again on a stack of holy books that they were never used to fling a cat. We do know that they were used to fling dead bodies, amongst other things, because when you couldn't, or rather, if you didn't want to take down the walls, didn't want to take down the walls, then another common use for them was to fling corpses over the walls, or especially of the sick people. The idea being that, all right, well, that'll spread disease.
It's biological warfare.
Yes, biological warfare is insanely old. I don't know who did it first, but I want to say that the earliest record that I remember reading about was sometime around 400 BC that they were using it in China. They were flinging corpses over the walls of the enemy cities to try to kill the population inside.
I assumed it would be mostly like psychological warfare. Like, it'd be very disturbing to have dead bodies flung at you. But it was biological warfare too.
I'm sure that would be effective to a degree as well, but I think you'd have a much better results from the biological warfare in most cases. The morale victory, or the morale effect that you would need to have for that kind of a thing, there would need, at least from my experience, well, certainly that will scare some people. There needs to be more of a reputation to go along with that, to reinforce that.
What do you mean?
So, like Genghis Khan, for example, I'd say, okay, he had a reputation about him. Mm-hmm. If he started flinging dead bodies over, I would be more inclined to believe that, okay, the psychological effect of fear is going to do more damage to the defenders than the disease from the rotting bodies.
Because that story of his renown would spread.
Yes, but if it's some guy from the neighboring kingdom that people hadn't heard anything about, like there were no legends about how horrible he was or about what he does to his victims or anything to that nature, comes along and starts flinging dead bodies over the wall, that's going to be disturbing to some people, but I don't think it's going to be as scary. It's not going to be as scary as
like
if
you
know who the other guy is. Yeah, so I think reputation has often had more to do with morale type victories or morale type conditions.
Okay. Now, what about a trebuchet? Is that just a catapult invented by a man named Treb? We used to know a guy named Treb.
Give me strength.
Did he invent the trebuchet?
I do not remember, or I may not have ever known the name, if there is any one name to credit for the man who invented the trebuchet.
Is it just a French catapult?
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I've always called it as trebuchet. I believe it was invented by the French, but I could be wrong. So no, it is not just a different type of catapult built by a guy named Treb. It is a... I don't know if people would consider it a catapult. I wouldn't consider it a catapult.
Wait.
It's definitely a siege engine.
It's a thing that flings stuff.
It's a thing that flings stuff, but the physics behind it is a heck of a lot different.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
All right, so trebuchet. I'm not a mechanic, so I might be getting
Should
some
I
of
look
the
up
term.
a picture?
I know what it looks like.
Okay.
I'm not a mechanic, so I might be describing its mechanics wrong. So catapult was basically you had like a kind of a stiffish board that you're with a cup at the top.
Yeah.
You put your ammo in whatever that cup-like thing is.
Yeah.
And then you pull down that stick as far back as you can with ropes or with chains or whatever the case is, and then you release it, and it flings forward and shoots your projectile that way.
So it was a spring action.
Okay, sure, yeah. I'll go with the spring action.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know how to describe these things
when
in
you make it
mechanical
with
terms.
when you make it for kids, like the little models, you use like rubber bands. So you pull it down, and then the rubber band wants to snap back, and that's what flings it.
Okay, so yes, that would be a fair one. So the problem with those is that, or at least compared to trebuchets and later devices, is it's not very accurate. You can guarantee that it's gonna go in generally the right direction, but it's not gonna hit a pinpoint target. And it's also not as powerful as it could be. Don't get me wrong, still powerful. Still going to hurl that thing a long ways away, depending on the size and the weight of the thing. But from the historical perspective, they weren't very accurate, so they weren't very reliable. Trebuchets changed that. They are a heck of a lot more accurate and a heck of a lot better in range because of it. Because of the mechanics that also make them more reliable. So a trebuchet is, I believe the proper term is a fulcrum or a counterweight system.
Yeah.
So what a trebuchet does is you have a box full of weight that's propped up. It's hanging up in place.
Yeah.
It's attached to a stick. The top end of that stick is lying down on the ground, or at least lower than where the weight box is.
Yeah.
And then there's a string or a rope attached to the end of that stick, and that is connected to the ammunition that you're firing, which I believe is the ammunition that you're firing is placed somewhere near where that weight box is, or possibly even on the other side, the far side of that weight box. I haven't seen an actual model outside of Hollywood that anybody's built of these things, so I don't know for sure where the ammo would be. But the important thing is you've got your weight box, you've got your stick, and then you've got the string, and at the end of that string is the ammo, the projectile that you're going to be firing.
Okay, so I'm picturing so it's not just a catapult. Where I don't know what I'm saying. I'm picturing like a seesaw, I guess. So you have your counterweight on one side and your kid or the ammo on the other side. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a catapult with a basket on the end.
Think about it more like a scale. You have your weight on one end of the scale, and it's being forced up. Even though the weight is heavier, it's being forced to stay up in place. And you have your ammunition on the other part of the scale, which is lower, despite the fact that it's lighter. So how the trebuchet works is that because of the momentum of the thing. So you release the weight drops, and when it drops and it rocks over to the far side, because it's on kind of like a scale or a fulcrum, So when it drops, it's going to rock back to the far side. It's going to force the stick to lift up. So the stick is going to go up, and as the stick is lifting up, it's going to be pulling on that rope that's holding onto the projectile. So that's going to force it to swing along as well. And trebuchets were highly complex, because if you didn't build it right, then it's not going to work right.
Well, yeah.
So
there's a lot that could go wrong.
So what happens is, now normally this means that your projectile is now being forced into an insanely long arc.
Yeah.
Because it's got the distance of the weight and the stick and however long that string or chain or whatever it is that's connected to the projectile.
Yeah.
So that's going to give it an insanely long arc. Because of this arc, that is going to give it a heck of a lot more momentum, which is going to make it be able to shoot farther.
Okay.
And because of all the mechanics into it, this is also going to make it shoot straighter. It's not going to be as widely what's the word I'm looking for? It's not going to miss with quite the same degree of inaccuracy that a catapult is going to. The problem, though, is that through all the mechanics is that the weight box has to have a limited space that it's going to rock back. If you let it rock back too much, or if it doesn't rock back at all, it's got to be able to eventually rock back, because what then happens when it rocks down for the most that it can, and it's got the whole mechanism going, when it rocks back, then it's going to pull back on the stick part. That's going to pull it backwards. That stick part is going to pull back on the rope part, and that's what lets go of the projectile so that the projectile can continue going forward at the target. If the mechanism is not built correctly, then the trebuchet is going to rock too far back. The stick will not be pulled back in time. Thus, the chain or the rope will not be pulled back in time. And your projectile is just going to go smack down to the ground. That's one of the... I can't say that's the worst case scenario, because the worst case scenario that I know of was worse than that.
Oh, no?
So that's a bad outcome. It's going to just smack right down to the ground, or of course it's not going to get either it's going to go too far because maybe you didn't set the weight right, so it'll go way over your target or past your target, or it might hit the ground short of where you actually wanted it to go. So
the rope
these were things that they could fix on the device through playing with it to make it fire at exactly where they wanted to go. Where with a catapult, you didn't really, at least to the best of my knowledge, you didn't have that many options for fixing it if you missed the target.
So you need the rope to release your ammo at like the height of the arc.
Yes.
Okay, but what about when the rope, so fine, ammo's released, everything's swinging back. That rope's gonna take out a bunch of troops, isn't it?
Not if you're not standing in the way.
But how much clearance did these things need so the rope and the stick and everything didn't just whip and take everyone out?
Because of the mechanism and all, it was very straight. So as long as you just didn't have anybody right behind the thing, you were safe.
Okay. I'm definitely going to find pictures and put these on our social media.
And they do still build these things today. I've seen, not just for movies and whatnot. Do you remember we watched the special features on the Lord of the Rings movies?
Oh, yeah, I loved it.
They showed clips in the special features. They built models of these trebuchets, and I thought it was funny because they were all giddy about it. They thought, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I believe, at least in the U.S., there are pumpkin chucking contests. Have you ever heard of those?
Oh, yeah. I've
seen people build trebuchets to launch those pumpkins.
Yeah.
So, yes, they do exist. They are safe.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned that the shooting it straight into the ground was not the worst case scenario. So the worst case scenario that I'm aware of is
that everything catches on fire and blows up.
No.
That's usually the worst case scenario.
In movies, maybe, but in actuality,
all you need to do is crash into a wall or something, no fire, no spark involved, and things blow up anyways.
In actuality, or I shouldn't say actuality, because once again, I cannot put my hand on a stack of holy books and say this. Mm-hmm. I have never read any accounts that have convinced me of the truthfulness of this.
Yeah.
That despite what you see in movies, anybody ever set the projectiles on fire.
Oh, for real?
That was too risky.
It looks so effective.
I mean, if it blew up in your own camp, it was going to be bad, and it might blow up too soon.
But you don't need an explosive. You just need a pile of hay on fire. Fling that over the wall.
A pile of hay is not going to fly.
Well, a hay bale.
They have to put it into some kind of compact space. Yeah. Or it's not going to fly right.
Okay, so a hay bale on fire.
It's going to burn up too fast, probably.
Okay.
So at least in movies, they always project it like they're taking a pot that's probably full of oil or naphtha or something like that, and they light it with the idea of, it's going to smash against whatever it hits.
And spread.
So I'm not saying that is impossible. They had the technology, they had the know-how to do that. But I've never read of an account where it was actually done.
Oh,
or at least not that I can recall.
That's a bummer.
I rephrase against. I cannot recall reading of one where I was able to do some additional research and confirm that, okay, so they definitely did light these things on fire.
Yeah. Anyway, so what is the worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario that I am aware of, I believe is also the last recordedly known use of a trebuchet in combat. I may be wrong on that. But it was actually the siege of Tenochtitlan.
Really?
When Cortez is sieging the city, he doesn't have cannons. So he and his men build themselves a trebuchet, at least one, and they use it during the siege of Tenochtitlan.
Dang.
Didn't work out too well for them. I've never read the mechanics of what went wrong, if there were any testaments that describe exactly how it failed. But yeah, they didn't build it right, and it ended up launching a projectile that just came right back down and smashed the trebuchet itself.
Dang.
Yeah.
So he lost, and the people of Tenochtitlan won against him because his stupid people didn't know how to build a trebuchet right?
What?
That's what you
Of course he won! Everybody knows he won! Everybody knows Cortez conquered the Tenochtitlan, conquered the Aztec Empire. How?
I know that, but it's just so fun to hear you, like, sputter, and you get high-pitched.
Why did the gods hate me?
So it killed their trebuchet, but they still were able to do some damage.
They still won. And that's a whole nother story in itself as to why they were able to win.
Maybe it was the Aztec gods that caused the trebuchet to malfunction.
That was a kind of an odd thing for them to choose to do, since they still didn't spare their own people.
Well, I mean, the gods are crazy sometimes, you know.
That's like saying that, okay, I'm a god, I'm watching my people. It's like, okay, I want my people to, my people are gonna get killed here. Oh, but there, look at that thing they're using over there. That's weird looking. I don't want my people to go down from that. I want my people to go down the old-fashioned way with guns and diseases.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you machine.
That's super messed up when you say it that way.
Yeah. You're the one that presented the idea.
It was just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Any other instances where these a pantheon of gods deemed worthy to destroy machines of war?
There are plenty of incidents in history where people have ascribed such things to various different gods, yes.
Okay, so you're saying that the trebuchet was better than a catapult?
The trebuchet was better than a catapult.
Then why is it that, like, a little kid knows what a catapult is?
Mm-hmm.
They make models of catapults.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? What I'm asking is, why are catapults more common in our collective consciousness than trebuchets, if trebuchets were better weapons? I assume trebuchets were used longer.
Catapults are simpler.
Okay.
Because I tried to describe the mechanics of it. It's very exact, and I mentioned the failings of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that catapults didn't fail once in a while, and that caused a problem too, but catapults are easier to understand. You pull something back and you let it go.
It's helpful when you have rubber bands, too, for the models. Wait, so what did they use for catapults? They didn't have rubber.
There were different things that they used for catapults. Sometimes they would use ropes. Sometimes they would use chains. Sometimes they would use a stretchy type of material. You know what a crossbow is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they would have like basically big crossbow type things that would shoot projectiles out.
So now, like a flexible wood?
No, those aren't catapults. And they had, I don't know what material they did, but they could make rope, they could make string, they could make things that they could pull back.
Okay.
And to create more tension. And some catapults operated the same way. If I remember correctly, they would attach a rope to the catapult, and they would just pull that rope back. They would have like a locking mechanism or something so that they can tighten it, and then you just let it go, so it shoots forward.
Oh.
The idea of the catapult is that the stick, the arm of the catapult, wants to straighten itself out, and we are forcefully manipulating it to get into a state it doesn't want to be in.
Right. Now, something that I did learn from Horrible Histories, an excellent BBC kids show.
History isn't horrible.
There were several things in history that were horrible. Anyways, something very cool that I learned from there is that, I mean, at least once, I don't remember if this was talking about a specific event or what, but their ropes that they were using for the spring action were made of leather, and the battle happened in the rain, so the ropes were useless. So the catapult didn't launch at all.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a problem.
I would dare to say that is one of the most commonly ignored features in any kind of study or comprehension of ancient warfare. I shouldn't say ancient warfare, of warfare in general, is failure to take into account the weather.
So what you're saying is all it takes is a simple rainstorm, and history is forever altered.
That is not what I said at all. What I said was that too many people in history and military history have not taken proper appreciation of the weather.
Is meteorology an important part of like the West Point curriculum?
I have no idea. I didn't go to West Point.
I bet it is.
I doubt they
You're
would've
saying
taken
weather
me.
is so important. They should all learn.
Weather is important. I
They
would
should
hope
all
that they
learn
know something about
meteorology.
weather. Yes, I don't know what they're. Give me strength. I don't know if. Why are you the way that you are?
Because it's so fun. Okay, were there any other, like, so you're saying that trebuchet wasn't necessarily, you wouldn't put it in the same category as a catapult?
For
What
me,
did
no.
you call it?
I would say it's in the same category in that they were both siege engines.
Okay, so what
but
else
I wouldn't call it a catapult.
So what are other siege engines? Were there any other
When-
siege engines
so
like
I
a
should-
catapult or a trebuchet?
I should refer. So, catapult, unless I'm mistaken, can also be used as a verb, and so therefore, yes, a catapult and a trebuchet catapult
Okay.
objects
Okay.
at their targets. But just for me personally, I don't know if there's. I don't know if there's a society of siege weapons.
What's the
out there that I'm
taxonomy
not
of
aware
warfare?
that would argue whether or not trebuchets and catapults belong to the same, are both considered catapults or not.
Yeah. Were there any other
Yes,
siege
I do not
weapons
think
like
of them
that?
as the same thing.
Is there like a third one that I'm forgetting?
Okay, let's see here. Catapults, trebuchets. There are, cannons eventually get into the realm of siegecraft.
That seems very, very different.
Battering rams are technically in the category of siegecraft.
Like that big old thing in Lord of the Rings, the boar or whatever it was. They
Grand.
and they heave it at the door.
Yes, battering rams were a real thing. Battering rams like that too. Not
On a cart
quite
like
as
that?
big that
That
I
was
recall ever
elaborate.
hearing. But yes, catapults are considered a siegecraft because their goal is the same. Well, granted, they don't shoot anything, but the goal is to breach the defenses of their enemies. Let's see here. At various different points throughout history, there have been rockets even before there were cannons.
Wait, rockets like Mulan firework rockets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, rockets. The Chinese were there, or I don't know if it's specifically the Chinese. There's a mess of rocket usage in warfare in China, in Korea. I want to believe even in Japan, but I'm going to take that back. I don't recall reading about it in Japan too much, but definitely in Korea and in China, there was usage of rocket warfare before they got cannons.
That's cool.
And there was, I don't remember who did this, but I remember reading an account on the idea of disease siege warfare again. There was somebody who would, probably was done in Asia because I think they used bamboo tubes to do it.
Yeah.
They would burn something. I don't remember what it was. It was some hazardous material, like the fumes are bad, get you sick, make you kill you or something like that. They would burn this stuff outside the city walls and use bamboo tubes to vent the fumes over the enemy walls so that it would get the defenders.
Was it mustard gas?
It was probably not mustard gas.
Okay, that's fine. So that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear more about that, but that'll have to be another episode. Very cool. Okay, do you have anything else to tell me about catapults, flinging cats, or trebuchets? You can't say that for certain.
I cannot say that for certain, but seeing as how I have never read of anybody documenting that they flinged a cat, I'm going to go with a no, they didn't do it.
That would be upsetting.
Depends. So, so to be clear, cats, like we view them today, or but that culture largely views them today, were not necessarily viewed in that way all throughout their
If you
existence.
had a cat come flying at your face, it would be mad. And I would be terrified.
If I were a commander and I found out that one of my soldiers put a cat into their catapult instead of a rock, I would decimate that unit.
But at some point you run out of rocks. So you start throwing anything you can.
And a cat was the best thing they could do.
Maybe. Okay, I'm going to ask the kids about this, but I'm pretty sure there's a episode.
You know, when there's an apocalypse and we lose all of our technology and people are going to have to go back to using trebuchets and catapults, I'm going to recommend to whatever empire we end up being a part of that they do not put you in charge of the artillery.
Okay, hold on. But I'm going to ask the kids because I'm pretty sure there was an episode of Horrible Histories. Yes, I know history isn't horrible, but
It's not.
I'm pretty sure there was something about someone flinging snakes. I don't know. I want to say it was like from one pirate ship to another. I don't know. I'm going to look it up. But like,
Well, snakes I
you
get.
could throw things other than rocks.
Snakes I get. I never said you couldn't throw things.
And
I never said you couldn't throw things other than rocks.
Throwing an angry animal would be really upsetting. That would be good psychological warfare.
Maybe for snakes, yes, I could see that. But unless I'm mistaken, unless you're in Egypt, nobody's afraid of cats. And I don't even know if
They're
Egypt's
not afraid of cats.
And I don't know
they
if
worship
Egypt.
them.
Okay, there we go. I see. I don't even know that they're afraid of cats. I know that some people have said that, like those mommy movies said that they were afraid of cats.
No.
But I've never read anything to suggest that they were.
They worshipped cats. They
Okay.
loved them.
Okay.
Now, I think we should add a little caveat here or a disclaimer. We are not advocating the abuse of animals, right? You would agree with that?
Cats are delicious.
Some cultures might eat cats, and that's fine. They do them, but like we're not advocating that anyone throw a cat over a wall because that would be mean.
No, I think I've made it very clear that throwing cats over walls using catapults or trebuchets is ridiculous.
I just want to make sure
Ridiculous.
nobody comes at us for animal abuse because we're not.
We don't have any
We're not
animals.
advocating that. That's true. We don't have animals.
We want to get animals, but somebody...
I don't want to get animals.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not what I'm about.
Think of how much happier my life would be if I had a puppy. Somebody to cuddle with. Somebody I could teach that history wasn't horrible. Somebody that would be interested in making me happy instead of tormenting me.
That's a tall order. All right.
I am a tall guy.
You are a tall guy. All right, I think that's where we'll end today.
History isn't horrible.
There are certain things in history that were horrible. All right, thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about today's topic, contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or Tickety Talk at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just be sure to specify in your message if it's a silly or serious, because we don't want to treat a genuine request for knowledge as a joke.
And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that has started.
What, seriously? It's recording already?
Yeah, start already.
Why doesn't it look this? Oh, we're using a different thingamajiggy now, aren't
Yes, we are using a different program.
we? Program? I thought these things were called apps.
It's software. It's not an app, it's on a laptop.
Alright. So is this considered an upgrade or a downgrade?
It's an upgrade.
Cool.
Yeah, we're moving up. Okay. I guess I can unplug this. Okay. Alright, are we ready?
Already. I've never been more ready.